Hello and welcome to another story. Well, the first story, I should say. Uh, yeah. I'm gonna do that intro again because that was shit. Um, Hello and welcome to story time. This is gonna be fun. First installment of the series. Alright, so I'm gonna kick it off. I already got the ambience going. Uh, you find yourself. Oh, yeah, let's jump in. So, yeah, you find yourself actually in this bar, in this tavern-like place. A bunch of adventurers are around, and yeah, you sit there and go to the bar after a long day's work, and it's always a new face in the local bar, and so you call over to the bartender and like just point like two fingers like all he knows is like 2 pints already, and then comes over to your table and gives it to you, and as locals, they'll come and go, and they'll join you at your table, and every now and then an adventurer will join as well, and you'll ask a few questions, basic chit chat. Yeah, and then somehow as the night progresses, you end up actually at the or at the bar itself with you leave your table and you go to the bar itself, and yeah, there ends up being a conversation struck up, and you ask one of the adventurers like, so why do you go? And this adventurer just explains that they're looking for something to do, something to occupy the time as a job. And this one explains that he goes dungeon delving. So like you can see he has a lot of rope with him, like on his pack. He has a couple lanterns like with the shade covers, and a lot of like those pins or pinions that you hammer in, and you can use those to get up and down, or like for rock climbing, like all kinds of stuff. And yeah, it actually makes him a pretty penny. You can tell. Um, well, mainly just by how much he's drinking and eating. You can tell. Not necessarily by his clothes. Another one seems a bit more, more of a meathead. Uh, yeah, basically he knows that he's like, I can fight, and he explains that he can. Yeah, he's very good with a sword, not much else. Uh, Ended up being discharged from the city guard. That was mainly because he said a few unpleasant things about the royalty nobility, uh, as happens. And a few others, they're all saying like they're in it for money, and like that's generally what the gist you're getting from a lot of these guys. But then there's one adventurer, one traveler in the like, not necessarily in the corner, going full Aragorn, smoking the pipe, head in the shadows kind of thing, but just someone off to the side, you know, kind of to themselves, kind of not, and go over and like you're obviously with this conversation not keeping quiet. Like a lot of people, they're kind of joining in the conversation as well. Like it's a boisterous kind of bar. Anyway, you end up going over to this guy and just not saying super quietly, and a couple of these guys follow you. Ask like, what about you? Why do you go adventuring? And he just kind of picks up his stein. I'll use this as a stein, and he just puts it down and gruffly responds. He's like, I don't go adventuring for money. I don't go adventuring for fame, as most of these people here do. I don't go adventuring for my name to go down in history. He's like, I go and I hunt these creatures so I can put them out of their misery. So I can end what everyone else started. And a couple of people just, look at him, and you look over to the bartender and just like, 4 more, 2 for each. You know it's going to be a long night. Or at least so you think. And, he just, this one adventure just continues. You ask why, do you want to put these creatures out of their misery? And what others started. And he picks up what you're putting down. He realizes you're wanting more of an explanation than just what he has already explained. And yeah, and his explanation is fascinating to say the least. A hushed tone actually comes across the bar you're in, the tavern. All that's left is the sound of the fireplace. Light rain comes in. You just hear this in the background, and that's really it. And this man talks about how he actually got started. And it was... He noticed the creature that came into town, or at least into his small village. It seemed broken, in a sense. Ravaged by the constant pillages and attacks from the locals, from surrounding locals, not just from this one village. This creature, it was actually a dragon wormling, so a somewhat small dragon that felt cheated really by the locals. It lost its family, its parents, and this adventurer, he already had, he knew how to hunt, he knew how to fight already. He had been a part of the local militia, so he had the weaponry to take care of this thing, or to take this thing on at least. And then he looks around the hushed bar, or the tavern, and he eventually looks into the eye of you with his singular eye that was left. And he just explains, he goes, I adventure to allow a proper farewell for what society considers monsters and creatures. I allow them to have peace. So, I should rephrase that. I don't allow them peace. I grant them peace as they wish. They allow me to grant them that. That dragon was the first one he granted mercy to. He granted this sense of farewell for them. And that was after this wormling. It killed half the village, or all of his family. He didn't kill this wormling out of revenge for his own family, out of not out of anger, but out of sadness, out of connection that was between this man and this creature. And that's just how he sees things. That's his way of, his method of adventuring. And he explains, and he goes, and upon every creature I take the life of, I ask if there's anything they wish to leave behind. Anything they know they do not want in the afterlife, or at least in their afterlife. Anything he does not want, or anything that these creatures do not want to be taken by anyone else. And I always make sure to respect that wish, he says. I always want to respect the creature for who they are, or what they are, why they are. I want to allow them that same sense of peace that we humans grant each other. We even grant our human enemies the same peace we grant our own people. And I grant that same sense to these monsters. And this hush just remains. It's silent. He finishes the ale. There's a gold coin. Just slams down the table. And he tosses something about that big. About a ruby. Or it is a ruby about that big. And just sets that on the table. Looks at the bartender and says, "This should cover the night." And walks out. You lean back in your chair and that was not what you expected for sure. It's definitely what happened though.